Hi, everyone. I'd like to welcome you all to another power session with the Knowledge is Power Foundation. My name is Islam Isa. I'll be your host for today, and I'm happy to introduce a good friend of mine and CEO of the Knowledge is Power Foundation, Darryl Dawkins. Darryl, thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule to sit down with us today. It's
Thank
great.
you.
It's great to sit with you.
Thank you. Thanks for hosting today's session. And yeah, I'm looking forward to sharing.
Yeah, no, it's my pleasure to be here. I've been closely watching the KIP Foundation and sort of your startup, and I can tell you I'm nothing short of impressed with what you've done so far. And I think there's no better time now than to get the foundation moving in the direction it's moving in. So congratulations on the progress and on the accomplishments so far.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
That's great. So why don't we start? Why don't you tell me a bit about the foundation itself, when it started, and what sort of the intent and the intent of the foundation is?
For sure. Absolutely. So a lot of people have come to me and asked me this exact question: Why KIP? Uh, why knowledge is power? Why now? Right? And it might sound like a simple answer, but I honestly truly believe that knowledge is power. In this day and age, if you just rely on what you're taught on in schools or by institutions or organizations, um, it's not enough. You're missing out on so much more. They are teaching you what they want to teach you, but there's so much more information out there. For example, I grew up in the public school system here in this country, and I love the public school system. It's not a knock on the system at all, but if I just rely on what I was taught by the public school system, I would think that this country, this beautiful country, was just built by white men. I would think that black men or indigenous people had no significant part in building this country. But I know that is not the case. And so I've decided that I need to increase my knowledge. I need to expand my sources of information. I need to learn about the Josiah Hensons of the world and the Rosemary Browns, who have each played significant parts in building this country, and they look like me. And so I just truly believe that there's so much knowledge out there for individuals to gain. I know it's not easy. I know not everyone has access to this information and this knowledge. So KIP Foundation was created as a vehicle for this knowledge to make its way out to the communities and the people who need it the most.
Well, that's great. And maybe you can talk a little bit. You touched on accessibility, and I think it's fair to say that growing up, perhaps you, I know I certainly experienced. It's sometimes difficult to access some of these resources and some of these information portals that may be more accessible to other individuals. So maybe discuss a bit about accessibility and how KIP can sort of facilitate access to those really important resources that maybe some people don't have access to.
Well, that's just it. Access is always an issue, especially when you're talking uh, um, northern communities or you're talking low-income communities. It's funny with the COVID-19. There's a stretch where everyone was saying, "Well, you know what? We'll just do schooling from home." Well, that works great if you have access to high-speed internet. If you're able to pay for the internet bill, not everybody's in the position to do that, right? So access is always an issue when it comes to the sharing of knowledge, and KIP is quite aware of that. And KIP's long-term goals are to find a way to make KIP available to everyone, whether it's a remote community. And ideally, before COVID-19, our intent was to go to these communities and these places, but right now everything is kind of online until public health officials say that we can get back at it. So we're always thinking and we're always trying to find ways to reach out to the communities the best way we can. One way of doing that is on the speakers that we bring in. They're all volunteers. They all want to give back. From the stories that the power sessions that you've seen already, there's incredible stories out there that are inspirational, that can be shared to various communities, whether racialized or not racialized. And it's just a way of giving back. And so we're in the early stages of KIP and we're continuing to progress, but accessibility is definitely a challenge, and it's a challenge that we're going to overcome.
Yeah, these are definitely challenging times, and I think you know you hit it on the head when you discussed some of the challenges folks have in accessibility, equipment, access to stable internet connections. Those are things that are sort of key to advancing, especially during a major pandemic. So hats off to the website. I've perused through it several times, and really impressed with the level of speakers and the engagement. And what really struck me too is that it's not necessarily, and I think you touched on it a minute ago, it's not necessarily just about racialized communities who can benefit from this. I think there are communities outside of the racialized community who can certainly go to the foundation website and get some really interesting information. I think this is a key to how we can sort of progress in social change, is when maybe the communities who haven't been affected traditionally can gain some knowledge and understanding about just what it is to be a racialized, member in Canadian society.
That's right. That's right. And I think our KIP followers are starting to gain an understanding of that when they hear of the incredible stories of the Jessica Mattins and the Teresa Ducharmes and the Audrey Mascarenas, right? It's just overcoming obstacles and getting to successful places in their lives, and now they're at the point where they can turn around and they can give back and help others. So that's what KIP's all about.
Well, that's great. I want to change gears a bit, Darryl, and I want to talk a little bit about who Darryl Dawkins is, and maybe give a background on your upbringing, your career path, etc. And you've come from a very interesting background, personally and professionally. So why don't you share that with our viewers?
Yeah, and I'll start off by saying this is something I don't normally do. I've spent a lot of time in my life and in my career not talking about myself, and so it's not something I'm comfortable doing. But I'll share a little bit about you, and I do want to share a story for the followers there on an experience I had, and this takes us all the way back to grade three. And you're like, why are you going so far back? But this has helped shape me as who I am today. But I remember grade three, starting at a new school, and I was there outside with my oldest brother. Thank God for older brothers. And nervous, scared, but at the same time excited for the new opportunity. And it was snack time at the school I was at, and I remember being in the snack room and the snack supervisor or the teacher handing out all the snacks to the white kids. And it came down to there was one snack left, and there was two kids left. One was myself as a black child, and there was an indigenous kid who was remaining. And so um, one snack, two kids, and so she decided to do what was, I guess, the best way for her to decide who gets the snack is, and I'm going to use a term it's kind of offensive, and I try not to use it too much, but she decided to go eeny, meeny, miny, mo, catch a nigger by the toe if he hollers them, and you know how the rest of that saying goes. And I remember being in grade three, knowing that that word didn't sound right, but I just knew something was off, but I couldn't tell you what it was. And so she ended up, I can't even remember who got the snack, at the end of the day. But the part that I remember the most about that, it was that after she left the room, the remaining kids in the class realized that there was somebody without a snack. And they did what's right. And they shared their snack with us. So we all partook in a snack that day. That was my first example of, I guess you could say, quote unquote, racism. But it was also my first example that you can lead from the back, and that's what actually the theme of this talk was, leading from the back. And what do I mean by that? The grade three kids in that classroom that they weren't in a position of power. They didn't have any say on how things operated there, but they looked over at two kids who didn't have a snack, or one kid who didn't have a snack, and they did what's right and they shared what they had. And that's my first example of racism, but it's my first example of leading from the back. And there's things that you can do to improve people's situation. So that actually stayed with me throughout all my life, my upbringing. My parents have been great. um, I've heard stories of what my grandparents have had to overcome. I've seen what my parents have had to overcome. I'm overcoming, or I'm fighting some of the same issues today. And now I have young ones who, you know what, I'm just hoping for a better world. I'm hoping for a better place where they can just succeed and and do what they want to do, live their best life, and not have to worry about the color of their skin or anything of that nature. So a little bit more, I obviously got into the law enforcement field as a profession, and obviously the last 5 and 6 months have been very challenging. I wrote a little article that you'll find on the website about the challenges of being a racialized member with what's going on in the world today. And I encourage everyone who gets a chance to read it and share their feedback on it. But that's brought me to where I am today. And I found I didn't have a voice inside the organization I work for. And so KIP is helping me be a voice outside of that organization.
No, that's great, and thanks for sharing that story. It's funny how these things stick with us for so long. In the third grade, you were maybe 9 years old, and it's those things that really, I think, shape you as an individual, and that really sort of develop you and who you are today. And the fact that you had your classmates sort of stand up for you and do the right thing, really, I think, tells me that children are inherently born with this notion that everyone is equal, and we can all sort of get along and be friends. And
That's
you know,
right.
I often look at my kids in awe when I see them, interacting with other kids on the street after having meeting them for 5 or 6 minutes. They become so close. So a lot of this, this nurture versus nature type thing that we discuss all the time is that I think people really are influenced by what's happening around them. So, the theme, leading from the back of today's power session, I think really falls into that. Just how, how we can be leaders of social change, and how we can do it and influence our young people to make the right decisions and to really advocate for the rights of others, because it really does take a village. So in that respect, where do you see sort of our teenagers and our young adults falling into this whole discussion, and how can they be beneficial and helpful to the next generation?
Sure. The young people play, I think, the most important role in social change. You'll see the support for, let's say, the movement, the Black Lives Matter movement. When you see the protests or the marches or the demonstrations, the majority of the crowd are not Black individuals, Black men, Black women, but they're supported by indigenous groups, they're supported by white groups, and you name it, right? And so the change really starts um, with them. Like it's to me, it's so powerful when a white person or an indigenous person says enough's enough, Black Lives Matter. Like that's, to me, that's extremely powerful. So KIP Foundation, we truly believe that youth, the young generation, is our target. That's who we would love to reach. But we're not trying to polarize one side from the other. We're just trying to get knowledge out to them. I remember a few weeks back, I was watching some news coverage of protests and demonstrations over monuments and statues. And large groups of people had gathered together to tear down a monument and a statue. And the reporter asked one of the young people in the crowd, "Why is this so important to you that this figure, this statue comes down?" And I watched as the young person was unable to give a solid answer. They didn't necessarily know the history behind the person, behind the monument, and why that could be offended or offensive to a certain group, right? And I just thought, how much more powerful would his protest or his demonstration be if they had the knowledge behind um, the reason, the knowledge behind the protest?
Yeah, so much of it is really, understanding the root of the issues. And I think, the great thing about KIP is, maybe that becomes the one-stop shop for people who actually want to, learn more about it and really empower themselves. So, in that light, I maybe want to discuss with you a little bit about the current state, the things that we are seeing currently as it relates to race relations, particularly in the United States. But of course, we're seeing these things, permeate into Canada, things that I think are very important. And I guess the first question for you is, the issue sometimes with the social justice movement is it can fizzle out, right?
That's right.
So, yeah, my question for you is, how do we keep the discussion going? And how do we keep this lens on, a really polarizing issue, and an issue that is really something that is challenging to discuss? And I think it's human nature to sometimes want to shy away from having those difficult discussions. So how do we keep, the lens on the topic, and how do we sort of continue to move things in the right direction?
Yeah, great question, and no easy answer for sure. And we've seen it in the past. We've seen um, uprisings of, say, the Black Lives Matter movement, and then a few months later, it kind of fizzles out, and then unfortunately something else happens that ramps us right back up. And it's a cycle that, quite frankly, I'm tired of seeing. There needs to be change, and there needs to be serious change as far as not just talking about it anymore, but actually getting things and programs in place. And one thing that never wavers, though, one thing that never goes up and down is knowledge, is improving yourself, is learning more. I truly believe that in 2020, ignorance is no longer an excuse. You need to do your own due diligence. You need to get out there. You need to know the facts, right? Because if you know the facts, it'll change. It may change your opinion. I look at this country, for example. You look at Canada Day celebrations, and for years and years, you look forward to Canada Day. You look forward to the fireworks. You look forward to being with your friends and your family. This year, I actually had to sit down and take a closer look at as to why certain groups didn't celebrate Canada Day. Why Canada Day wasn't meaningful for them. In fact, it was hurtful for them because um, they were in this country, and they were told that they were no longer a part of this country, and pushed to the side and isolated. So as movements go up and as movements go down, one thing that is consistent that we can do for ourselves is to increase our knowledge, try to put ourselves in other people's shoes and circumstances. And I strongly encourage that. I know the organization I worked for immediately following the George Floyd death and the protests and demonstrations that followed. I know statements were coming out from different organizations on supporting Black Lives Matter and other, racialized groups. But have you noticed how quiet that's gotten in the last little while? And it takes another unfortunate circumstance like Jacob Blake to bring it back into the spotlight. But we definitely need to find a solution. We need to find a way to make real change, not lip service, but real change.
Yeah, no, I agree with you absolutely there. No, I think we're seeing more and more, individuals who hold sort of prominent positions, athletes, maybe the people that certainly I looked up to growing up. I think back on my role models as as a visible minority. I mean, a lot of my role models didn't come from within the home or within my own community. These role models came from television and sport,
That's right.
or entertainment. I think my first role model was Michael Jordan, or the Fresh Prince. These are individuals who I really looked up to because in our household, being newly landed immigrants, my parents were forced to work many hours a day. So I couldn't necessarily see my dad in that light. He was always working. And I think that still exists in many communities today. And I just wanted to get your opinion and your feeling on, the sort of most recent push of our sort of more prominent athletes and individuals in Canada who have taken a stance supporting the Black Lives Matter movement.
I love it. I love what they're doing. I love seeing boycotts, and I love seeing these men and women use their platform for good. I think it's only a positive thing. But one thing I would want to share with the viewers out there is that those aren't your only role models. There are people that look like you in your community who are doing great things. I look to my dad as an example, who came to this country with literally the clothes on his back, and he was able to work hard to achieve success, and to give myself and my brothers a better life, right? And so I love what the athletes are doing. I love what the actors are doing. I love what all the professionals or celebrities are doing out there. But I would encourage the young people watching today to look to their communities as and find role models within those communities, because believe me, they're out there. Um, you just need to sit down with them, maybe put your phone down for 15 minutes and ask one of them their story. Um, and you're going to hear some incredible stories out there. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing just the talent and the inspiration that we're surrounded by. And I think if we just take a minute to search for that and understand that sometimes it's actually right in our own backyards, that you can really sort of find yourself surrounded by some key people in your lives, and those who can really sort of motivate you and help you transform as you get older.
And that's what I think, that's where you'll find the leaders. There's a lot of people out there who hold leadership positions, but they're not leaders. And again, it brings me back to leading from the back. Um, you know, if you look at policing in the U.S. or in Canada, for example, when policing started in the South, in the southern states, it wasn't to bring law and order. It wasn't to serve and protect. It was really to catch runaway slaves, because the slave owners were complaining that slaves were running away. And when you think about it, that's the reason why an institution was started. Sure, you can fast forward 100 years, you could fast forward 150 years, but to turn around and say that there's no systemic racism, or there's no, you know, there was in the past, but there isn't anymore. It's just in and of itself, it's not a logical statement. When an organization, say in this country, was started in order to keep a certain group of people in check, so that um, they would stop interfering with the business of the day or the expansion of the country. It's not logical to turn around and say there's no systemic racism. And so I say that to say, leaders, because somebody holds a certain position, leadership position, please don't necessarily look to them as a leader, because in the background, in the back, I think that's where you'll truly find the leadership. You'll find the individuals who will take the time to learn the history, not the history the way that organization wants you to know it, but the history in the way that it truly affected the people and the communities that we're trying to serve today.
Very well said. Very well said. And I think we automatically equate leadership with knowledge. And I think what's sort of evident and really crucial to have foundations like knowledge is power, is that our leaders don't know it all, and our leaders do need to continue to advance their knowledge and understand those issues that they weren't exposed to previously. And I think we've seen some examples of leaders really acknowledging that their knowledge is lacking in certain social justice issues, and they've taken steps to rectify that. And I think on the other hand, we've seen some examples of leaders maybe who haven't been able to embrace it. So it really does sort of fall into this idea that leaders are not always completely knowledgeable on certain topics, and we certainly need to be able to keep the discussion going and have those tools available to all individuals to really understand some of these complex issues.
That's right.
Well, Darryl, I just want to ask you, what is your vision for Knowledge is Power going forward? I mean, you've done some incredible work up to now. The power sessions are, they're aptly named because they are very powerful. So what is your vision? Like, what's your 5-year sort of vision, or maybe like a short-term, long-term vision on the foundation itself? Where do you see yourselves? And let us know where you want to go with it.
Onward and forward, man. It's a concept that kind of is just coming together. It's kind of sprung up quickly, but we're doing what we can with it. What I would love to see are individuals out there, certain knowledge sets, skills, reach out to KIP and say, I like what the organization is doing. I like what the foundation's doing. I'm knowledgeable in this area, and I would like to share it with the audience. And there is no knowledge that isn't important. That's the best part of this. You may be a doctor, you could be a lawyer, you can be a gamer, you can be a historian. There's something out there that everyone has to share, and there's something out there that would be received by our followers. So we're just looking to move forward with the foundation. We're hoping to launch one of our activities for a community We would like to select a community later this year that needs support or needs help. For example, we talked about accessibility, we talked about technology, and so we'd like to raise funds and help specific communities as we move forward. And sponsorships, right? If you're a business owner, or if you're working in corporate Canada and you like the idea, you like the message behind KIP, please come on board. Please sponsor. We're not for profit. We're not out here to gain. We're just out there to give back to the communities that need it the most.
Fantastic. Well, you guys are doing excellent work, as I said, and I want to thank you very much for giving us your time today, and commend you for the hard work that you're doing, and encourage all of our listeners and our viewers to get onto the KIP website, have a look at the resources that are available, watch some of those power sessions, and certainly empower yourselves. And always keep in mind the leading from the back is key as we move forward. So, thank you so much, and I'll leave the floor to you for any last words.
Yeah, I'll keep it short. Again, thank you for doing this interview today. And for the KIP followers out there, thank you for your support so far. Your comments, your feedback is everything that's sent to the foundation is read and it's reviewed, and we take your feedback very seriously. So if there's a session that you want to hear about, let us know. If you want to get involved as a volunteer, please let us know, and we'll keep moving this thing forward together.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Darryl. Have a great day.
You as well. Thank you.